Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, we ask that you kindly turn off all cell phones and electronic devices or place them on silent. Thank you.
Shalom, everyone. I'm Rabbi Gary Gans. I'm the Rabbi Emeritus of Congregation Beth Tikva, joined on the podium this morning with Rabbi Pamela Gottfried, who is our new congregation rabbi. Honored to have her join us, sadly, for such an event. Difficult in her early tenure with Beth Tikva, but she enjoys seeing the lovely sense of community and consolation that we form with each other. I had mentioned to her the other day that the upside of being with the congregation as many years as I have gives me the opportunity to be with many of you through your simchas, your sadness. But the downside is seeing the demise and the death of people that I've grown close to for all these years as well, like Meyer. Your presence today is a token to your connections with him. And you saw that our preliminary service, our ceremony, was cutting of the ribbons. Thousands of years of tradition inform us that when children mourn parents, the ribbons are on the left-hand side. Bad biology, but good emotion, because they thought the heart was on the left. Every other relationship is on the right-hand side, including Gretchen, including their good friends Joel and Michael. And as I explained to them briefly, the ribbons are not cut all the way across. They're still the thread of connectedness and love and life that holds these threads and your threads to Meyer directly. Ma'ayan Hechayim, wellspring of life. We come together sharing our sorrow, our sadness, to commemorate Meyer's life. We recall the blessing of his life. We thank God for all that was good and true in his life, and for the precious memories which shall endure. Eternal God, his family, friends, congregants, fellow bridge players, seek light to dispel the dark gloom that threatens to overwhelm them. Be gracious to those who mourn, for they are in distress. Bless them with your compassion. Ease their burden of sorrow. Send them light and peace, for it is written, "Fear not, as I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I'll sustain you with my power." And let us all say, Amen. And I welcome Rabbi Gottfried to lead us in Psalm 23.
Mizmor LeDavid, a psalm of comfort to David. Adonai ro'i lo echzar bino deshe yarbitzeni, al me menucho tinahaleni. Nafshi yeshovev, yancheni v'magle tzedek, lema'an shemo. You make me lie, God is my shepherd, I shall not want. You make me lie down in green pastures. You lead me beside the still waters. You renew my life. You guide me on paths of righteousness for your sake. Gam ki elech begetz al mavet, lo irara ki ata imadi, shivtecha umishantecha hema yinachamuni. Though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me, your staff and your rod, they comfort me. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sororai, dishanta vashemen roshi kosi rivaya. You spread a table for me in full view of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti beveit Adonai le'orech yamim. Surely only goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever.
We extend our consolation, Gretchen, Josh, Ethan, Nicole. This is not an easy day for any of us, yet it's important. It was important to Meyer, who attended so many funerals and shivas, mourning minions on behalf of our congregation, that his Jewish life gave essence to his soul. Now, Meyer and Gretchen were married for 40 years, as if they'd just come through the deserts and were ready to enjoy and explore the land of living in milk and honey, but wasn't meant to be. And I've known Gretchen and Meyer virtually all those 40 years, even before they came to Beth Tikva. I had the opportunity to spend time with them. And Josh and Ethan were connected through the years. B'nai Mitzvah, Israel trips, confirmations, health issues. Josh is wearing the tie that I always remember Meyer wearing, his Albert Einstein tie. I don't know if he had any others, but this was the one he wore mostly to services. In my mind's eye, when I see Meyer, I see this tie, if he wore a tie at all. So you're bringing that to this day, Josh, and it feels good to see it. Now, we all knew Meyer in different ways, through the congregation, through his bridge, through the community. One thread that was common is we all knew Meyer as a brilliant guy. When I would talk to him about his dissertation for his doctorate, I didn't even understand the topic, let alone the content. And I never did quite figure out what he did as a civilian for the military. He always maintained his confidentiality. Meyer was a nationally ranked bridge player and was often paid to play with lesser-rated players in order to boost their own rankings. I didn't even know that was a thing. Meyer was filled with his Jewish education. And it was instilled at a very young age by his parents. When he attended as a young boy, a bocher, he learned in yeshiva elementary school, yeshiva high school, and prepared him to know what it was to live a Jewish life. Now, his Hebrew accent wasn't so great. It was very Eastern European, but he came to it and earned it honestly. Now, both of Meyer's parents died when they and he were very young. His father was a survivor of Auschwitz, not a story he told very often, yet it helped form who he was. It presented his love and his commitment to Judaism. And thanks to his uncle Frank, who stepped up, who supported Meyer and provided for his education, which he used well. By the way, it's a short call, not long distance to God. So please, if you haven't turned off, please do that with your phones. You remember Meyer with his sense of humor, his kindness, often behind the scenes. He was a mensch. Didn't look for credit, but just did the right thing because it was the right thing. And he liked to share his knowledge. Particularly at CBT, he was one of the forces behind the informal Shabbat morning davening, donuts or Dunkin' and Torah, depending upon which name we use at a given time. Meyer wasn't shy about Torah study or the great spread that Gretchen would put out for all of us. Last week I visited Meyer in the hospital. He wanted to set his life, his soul, with God. These are his words. I had heard from Gretchen his circumstances. I knew what was going on. Yet when I came into the room, he suddenly became animated, very awake and alert, and he wanted to say a prayer with me. We said the Shema. And I gave it to him one word at a time because I wasn't sure how much he was absorbing. But he did. And now 2 or 3 minutes later, he put his hands on his eyes, as was his custom, and recited the Shema on his own. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. And he started to cry. It wasn't a shame that I saw it, but I understood the intensity of his emotions. He had felt isolated from God and was counting on me to help set his path straight. Now, I can't speak for God, but I assured him nonetheless that by merely saying that prayer and meaning it and understanding it and taking it to his heart, that God would help him through this next part of the process. And from what I understand, those were his last minutes of awareness, of lucidity. And I was honored that he shared that with me. I was only afraid that I'd used him up. But I saw how important it was that we said the Shema and that he understood all that it entailed. He kind of knew he was approaching the end, but not really. Because one of the things he said to me, and was repeated by Gretchen as well, is that when this was over, he wanted to make a trip to Israel. And he may have said some of that to some of you as well. Nicole is shaking her head too. I knew he wasn't going to make a trip to Israel, but I wasn't going to disabuse him of that thought if there was any hope at all left in his being. Saying the Shema since then at different services has taken on a new meaning to me as well, having seen how important it was to Meyer. I continue to respect him for that. Many of you have been here in this very room, at this very podium, for other funerals that have taken place in your families, including my own parents, this very place. And there is a text that I share often by a rabbi and scholar who lived thousands of years ago named Ben Sirach. Understood realities of life, the release that comes from death. And in translation, I'm going to share his words with you. And he wrote, "We are all destined to die. We share with all who ever lived, with all who ever will be. Cry for the dead. Hide not your grief. Do not restrain your mourning. But remember, when the dead are at rest, let their memory be a source of peace and be consoled when the soul departs. Death is better than a life of pain, and eternal rest is better than lingering illness. as a drop of water in the sea, as a grain of sand on the shore, are our few days in eternity. But a good name, a good reputation, endures forever. So we remember the healthy Meyer. We remember the more energetic Meyer. But also acknowledge that there was the Meyer released into peace. And quoting from the book of Ecclesiastes, for everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. Indeed, this is the time to speak. I'm honored to call on Josh and Ethan, who will be coming up, I understand, together, but each will be speaking separately.
Who my father was matters less than my memory of him. Star Wars: The Clone Wars, Episode 20, Death Trap. When I was in the Cub Scouts, Dad helped orchestrate some interesting events for our den and the troop as a whole. Once he had a neighbor who was an FBI agent come over and talk to our den about his job. Another time, Dad helped our den come up with a few jokes and a skit or two for a talent show. My favorite was we had a balloon designed to look like a barbell. Each of us came out attempting to lift it and failing. When it was my turn, I appeared wearing a muscle man costume that Dad got. I failed, only for the sisters of two of the other guys to come by and carry it off with one finger. When it came to the Pinewood Derby, the wooden car races where the kids' cars would be raced down a simple downward ramp, Dad always did his best to help me make a car, despite neither of us being very good with woodwork. After I aged out of the Cub Scouts, Dad and I worked together to create a computer program for my former troop to keep track of and print out the races and winners. In college, which was an hour away from home, I performed in a play, and Dad made a point to trek out to see every single show. As an adult, I took a trip with my parents to New Orleans for the wedding of the son of one of Mom's friends. We didn't get into the French Quarter where we were staying until late at night. Dad and I decided to hunt for a snack on the way to our building, and as we explored a bit, we came across a row of buildings of adult entertainment. One of the gentlemen tasked with getting customers offered us a father-son discount to see his music. And for a moment, I thought Dad was going to take him up on the offer. So that's Meyer, as I choose to remember him.
Standing?
Yeah.
Good. For those of you that didn't know my father, you might be in the wrong room. For everyone else, you're probably expecting a speech from me and Josh that's funny, witty, a little inappropriate, but tastefully inappropriate. Maybe, pull at your heartstrings a little bit. Unfortunately, our milkman didn't have the same gift from gab that Meyer had. But I'll do my best anyway. For those of you who met my dad through the bridge world, you'll likely most remember him as Ethan's dad. But you may also have some memories of his own bridge accomplishments. I didn't know this until just recently, but he actually has a Wikipedia page dedicated to his bridge achievements. Meyer was a Grand Life Master, won the Werner Open Pairs in 2011, and the Truscott Senior Swiss in 2022. He was also the president of ACBL District 4 for a time, and his tournament chair before that. And as tournament chair, Meyer had a revolutionary idea on how to boost attendance at tournaments. This will surprise everyone that's not a bridge player. His revolutionary idea was to get some good food and give it away for free. It's massively popular among the bridge playing world. Although to me, and this is a sidetrack, just kind of only for bridge players are going to understand this one, but his most impressive accomplishment in the bridge world to me was his little-known invention that I like to call the tobacco tank. When I was 11 years old, I started playing bridge. And although the main events my dad had already had commitments to play, him and I played in the morning knockout every morning of that tournament. The very first day, we played against the Bulgarian national champions. And me being new and me being 11, I couldn't quite hold my cards the right way. I was just a little bit slow on the uptake. And these gentlemen were less than polite about it. And they destroyed us. So later that week, we came up against them for a second time. I was nervous about it since they had destroyed us. My dad goes, "These guys are heavy chain smokers. Before every trick, before every bid, I want you to count to 5. Just take your time." And for the bridge players in the room, you all know that no one could tank like my dad. That was his #1 bridge achievement. So by the third hand, these guys were melting down, losing their minds, and we won walking away from that one. Although, to be sure, my dad was quite accomplished outside of the bridge world. He was also a big fan of poker. Some of you guys from AMSA that I saw here today, I still remember one of my earliest memories. I must have been 9 or 10. We were down at AMSA, we were down in Aberdeen for the picnic. And then we went back to the nicest suite available at the crappiest hotel in Aberdeen, Maryland, where a card table was set out for us. And we ate the worst pizza I've ever had, and Meyer and his work buddies taught me how to play poker. And of course, a lot of you from the synagogue know from the poker group. And you guys are the most amazing to me because you're the only people who have willingly listened to him sing and still wanted to spend time with him afterwards. You know, in addition to all of the cards, you know, I hear that he was pretty good at math. Looking back on it, I wish I had paid more attention when he'd talk about it. But I do know he was good enough to go on study mathematics at Cornell and then get his PhD from the University of Michigan, whose fight song he would go on to butcher weekly for pretty much the entirety of his life. One thing my dad never spoke about much was his work. I don't know if he felt the math was over my head or if I found it boring or, you know, he was really some kind of spy and it was just classified. But the one thing that I did know about his work is the sense of pride he took in over 40 years of public service defending our country. When he walked into my parents' house for years, the first thing you would see going through the front door was my bar mitzvah picture, because I was a great-looking kid. I don't know where it went wrong, but back then I was good-looking. And that picture was there for maybe 8 or 9 years until my dad got his service flag. He just chucked that picture right in the trash to put the service flag right on the wall because that was his most prized possession. It was a symbol of a life dedicated to public service and defense of our freedoms. Even as he battled all of his health problems, he was still fielding calls and trying to attend meetings with his colleagues. one of the last things he said to me, that was a complete sentence, was that he had to get his computer, he had to get on his computer because he needed to defend our country. That fierce loyalty and dedication defines my father's very spirit. I don't think there's a person here who could honestly say that Meyer wouldn't drop everything and run if they asked him. He cherished the friendship and love of everyone here today. I remember as a kid asking my dad why he was friends with one specific bridge player after learning that he had a less than stellar ethical reputation and was not very well liked by most other people. And my dad had said, "He has been my friend for longer than you've been alive, and we don't abandon friends. We help them when they need help." So in the spirit of helping people, I just wanted to close by letting my Uncle Joel know that I have a step stool up here for him when you're ready to talk. This is the first time I've had to get in front of a room full of people and speak that my father hasn't helped me write a speech with. But he did insist that I throw in that one short joke. And I just couldn't deny him that one little request. Thank you. Yeah, sorry, I was kind of leaning on him.
I'm now honored to call on Mike Schickman.
As unaccustomed as I am to public speaking,
You're going to have to explain that to us.
well, I was voice of James Madison University football, basketball, and women's basketball for 29 years. I have a daily talk show. I've been on the air for about 40 in a beautiful town in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia called Harrisonburg. It's the college town of JMU. Now, I am always amused about what people call Mr. Kotkin. Gretchen was the first one who came up with the Meyer stuff. But, you know, she's always been a very good person. So we can forgive her anything, since the good Lord already has put her through the torture chamber. When I first met Mr. Kotkin, Joel introduced me, my dear friend Joel, introduced me as, this is Meyer Kotkin. Okay. I wondered who elected him mayor, but what the heck. But it was my fortune when I was a college broadcaster at Long Island University in downtown Brooklyn. Meyer and I met for lunch, which you knew was not just finger food. And I had to do a couple of sportscasts. Well, at that time, the New York Rangers, in their endless task to try to win a Stanley Cup, which at least Meyer got to see in his lifetime, though many of us will probably not get to see again. I said, Meyer, we were talking about it in the car, and I said, Meyer, do you want to talk about it on my show? And he said, sure, why not? Talking in front of people, Meyer, embarrassed? So I didn't want to, go through the Meyer stuff. I introduced him by saying, ladies and gentlemen, here with a special commentary, my good friend and sportscaster, Meyer Kotkin. So while all of you think of him as Meyer, to me, he will always be Meyer Kotkin. And if you remember the old Saturday Night Live bit with Fred Garvin, you can imagine what the other half of it was. I first met Meyer up at Cornell. Joel and I have been friends since 4th grade. We went to yeshiva together. He said, there's this wild guy you're going to love. 'Cause he was a when you come to the Young Israel House. Introduced me to Meyer. Meyer was, well, you probably can fill this out if it's a multiple test choice, either eating, drinking heavily, or otherwise on his way to and from the restroom. And he said, "Nice meeting you," and that was it. Well, I got a chance to know him better over the years. And one of my great adventures, at Joel's request, and he emphasized at Meyer's demand, I bring up a busload of nice Jewish girls from my alma mater, Queens College. I did not show the girls a picture of either Joel or Meyer. I wanted to get volunteers. Well, Mr. Kotkin was the bartender. Now, there are things you don't want to allow Mel Kotkin to do. In my lifetime, I did both. As the bartender, he was a big believer in that old Abbott and Costello bit. One for me, one for you. Two for you, 1, 2 for me. 3 for you, 1, 2, 3 for me. Until, okay. He adored my late wife. I brought my late wife up to Cornell, and despite Meyer's pleading with us to stay for services, I decided to take my girlfriend to the Pancake House on campus. And Meyer's last words to me struck a real chord. Not as good as the Shema with you, Rabbi. He said, if you run into a tuna sub on your way to the Pancake House, invite him home for dinner. Brilliant? Yes. Wise guy? Oh, yeah. Smart? Yeah. By the way, Rabbi, you did better than I did with his dissertation. The only thing I understood was the Meyer Kotkin when you opened it up. After that, it was total foreign language to me. Let me tell you, though, about the Meyer Kotkin and the Gretchen Kotkin I know. My father was also an Auschwitz survivor, like Meyer's father. My father wouldn't let Meyer up to the main floor of their house until he brought home his girlfriend. Her name was Gretchen. My father always called her Gretel. Now, in his prime, my father spoke 7 languages. He was a wool merchant in Europe. Well, Gretchen probably understood 1 out of every 7 words, but he adored her. And yes, because of her brilliance and her sweetness and her kindness, my father finally allowed Meyer to go to the 2nd floor of the house. I'll tell you how bad it was. Meyer split his pants. Well, when big people like us split our pants, we don't just, not a little split. No. It was from sea to shining sea. And I told my mom, I said, Mom, can you sew Meyer's pants? She goes, how bad is it? And I said, you don't want to see it. She says, well, bring his pants upstairs. You know your father won't let him upstairs. So I took Meyer's pants upstairs. The split was kind of like the North and the South during the Civil War. It looked like battle scars on both sides. My mother loved Meyer. That was mistake number 1, was the bartender. Number 2, my girlfriend and I got engaged, and we wanted to make Meyer part of the festivities. Well, somebody had the bright idea of letting Meyer cut the corned beef and pastrami with a slicer. And once again, going back to his Cornell days of bartending, 1 slice for you, 1 slice for me. 2 slices for you, 2 slices for me. Meyer Kotkin and Gretchen named me God's godfather. I've never been so proud before, and the way Josh has been over the last year, I've never been as proud before. Ethan, it's so great to see you and to meet your wife, because I don't remember meeting her before. Of course, that's because I was probably with your dad, and we went back to the bartender, 1 for you, 2 for me. I really appreciate all of your support of the Kotkin family. On a Sunday, on a Wednesday, to have this kind of crowd to wish the family their support and to Mayor farewell is truly a blessing from God. On behalf of my godson, his wonderful mother, his wonderful brother, and his sister-in-law, God bless all of you, and thank you for being here.
I now call on Joel Seidman. I'll call it up for you, yes. Thank you, Joel. Thank you.
I want to thank Josh and Ethan for for giving the sort of speech which allowed me to talk about Meyer uncensored. And let me just get up on this, so that's better. Let me introduce myself. My name is Joel Seidman, and I first met Meyer in 1972 in Ithaca, New York, where I started working for him, for Kotkin Industries. I was his driver. In my green Plymouth Fury 3, Meyer would sit shotgun, and he pushed the seat back. He called it, Meyer had these great phrases always. He called it his zone of comfort. And in addition to that, I was his front desk clerk who would give him the wake-up calls on Sunday morning when he was tasked with shaping the minds of young students in Hebrew school, which is a story that, I don't know what they learned, but I'll let you know a little bit about what he taught. Here I was, a freshman at Cornell, and I came to meet this guy who I found to be one of the most unusual people I've ever met in my life. From the time I met him till the time I received the call that I dreaded, the call on Monday, with the devastating news, I was all those things. I was driver, I was front desk wake-up clerk, confidant, friend, so close of a friend that I became family. And so Meyer's passing to me, to my wife Yael, and to my kids represents an enormous loss for all of us. And yet, as much as Meyer's passing has ripped out a part of me, I've come in these brief comments to celebrate Meyer's life. In thinking about how to define Meyer, I was struck with these attributes. First, the obvious one, brilliant on any topic. He hit it out of the park no matter what the topic was. Brilliant without being haughty, without having any arrogance about it. I know a lot of very funny people, including my friend Michael, who I know from 4th grade, extremely funny people, but it would be hard to top Meyer for his humor. And for a person who I always will remember sitting in an easy chair and not liking to stand up, he was the stand-up comic that beat everyone else. The humor was spontaneous. He didn't need a special occasion to show his wit. He was the family man, deeply devoted to his kids and Gretchen. And Gretchen, you should know this, that when he met you, and it's not only me, it's everybody who knows you, says Meyer truly won Mega Millions. He always spoke lovingly of his boys, of Ethan and Josh, and then later Nicole, and he was proud of you and loved you so much. Meyer, as the friend, was a true and loyal friend. One of the things that I always remember about his workday is Yal and I would go down to visit, say we came early on a Friday or on a Thursday. Meyer would get on the phone to his boss and he said, well, I have some friends down from New York and I think I'm catching a cold. In the second row, we have here Johnny Zettelman. I remember a favor that Johnny asked us to do, which shows what a great friend Meyer was. Johnny had a cat, not a too friendly cat, not a bright cat, and not a likable cat. Why Johnny had the cat, you can ask Johnny. He asked us to drive this cat, me in my Plymouth Fury 3, with Meyer from Ithaca, New York, to Long Island. It only took us about 20 hours. The cat was going crazy. Meyer was in the back seat with the cat. The cat was clawing Meyer. Now, Meyer did not need material to make fun of Johnny. But I tell you, even that he milked. And you know, that was one example of the sort of favor. There were crazy times, let's put it that way. As a true friend, Meyer was there for me in my happy days and in my sad days. In meeting my wife, Yael, in celebrating our wedding, in consoling me in the loss of both of my parents. I do recall, I don't know if Gretchen, if you knew this, but that my mother passed away in 1983, and it was traditional not to go to weddings, not to celebrate happy occasions for a period of 11 months from the death of a parent. My father was so concerned about the sort of the hole that I had dug myself in on the passing of my mother that he insisted that I go to your wedding because it was so important to him. And I did, and that going to the wedding helped me dig myself out of that hole that I had. So that was another aspect of the friendship. He was there for my bachelor party in Atlantic City. And the bachelor party was odd. A friend of ours got us rooms at the Claridge, but a friend of ours always did to the excess, our friend Cliff, who's listening to this on Zoom, and it probably cost hundreds of dollars per person. Although he claimed to have saved money by getting the Carnegie Deli to comp a 12-foot hero, which we rolled through the casino on one of these luggage carts. It was really quite a sight to see. Meyer always used to tease me that because of this bachelor party, my bachelor party, he had to take a second mortgage to pay for it. As to what other things happened in Atlantic City, well, as the saying goes, what goes on in AC stays in AC. And we did, Michael, Yael, and I, and Gretchen, and Meyer take trips, and Josh, I remember, meet in Atlantic City. And you know, what was funny was that Meyer was dealing with the most serious things, public servant that you discussed, Ethan, yet he never seemed to get upset about work. There were only two things that would upset him: poker and blackjack in Atlantic City. That is the only thing that really pressed his buttons. Meyer, the other thing that Meyer had as a great trait was Meyer the delegator. Sitting in the chair, we come to visit. He turns to Yael, my wife, and he says, Yael, are you thirsty? She said, yeah, I could have a drink. Josh, go get Yael a drink. Ethan, get Joel a seltzer, which was really one of the great traits. The great sign of a leader is if you can't do it yourself, to know how to give it to somebody else to do. The other obvious thing is Meyer the procrastinator. Meyer's motto, procrastinate now, don't put it off. And I think most of the procrastination had to do with poker playing. Playing poker all night before an exam or a paper. I heard from a colleague of his that they had a presentation to do and that they were only half finished with preparing the slides. and they played poker all night. Meyer gave part one of the presentation during the morning, while part two was being worked on by his colleagues who had played poker with him. But anyway, this was that was weird. But that's just me. This was how, Meyer's poker playing interfered with his Hebrew school teaching. And one of the things was that he was supposed to teach Hebrew school every Sunday morning, play poker all night, and 7:30 in the morning, the phone started ringing in our house. You pick up the phone, I pick up the phone, and it's Rabbi Leibel Dimson, a British rabbi with a thick accent, begging me to wake Meyer to go teach. Meyer taught them only one thing: the history of the Jewish boxer Daniel Mendoza, a Portuguese Jew who fought in the 18th century. How he came to this, I never knew, but he had figured out, as the great mathematician that he was, that there was no way that it was worth it to teach Hebrew school for the pittance that they were paying him. So that was his revenge. I'm going to conclude by sharing what I think sums up Meyer in Meyer's own words, and there's two aspects of it. One is his humor and his friendship, and the other is his love for family. When my father turned 90, I invited the Kotkins to a celebration for my father and asked Meyer to write a brief tribute to my father. And in this tribute, you see Meyer's brilliant humor. And you thought the joke about the step stool was funny. Wait till you hear this. We all have our quirks. My father's thing was he was a buff. He liked to run to fires. He liked to run to police scenes. He had a police scanner. And his other thing was his penchant for liking to wear striped boxers and wife-beater T-shirts. So this is Meyer's tribute to my father, and it encapsulates it all. Joel Seidman and I met at Cornell University. I had never known anyone that short before, and I liked to put Joel on a leash and walk him on campus to show him off to the normal-sized friends. We quickly became friendly, namely because he had a car, and I didn't like to walk anywhere, much less up the steep hills of Cornell. Winter break of 1972, Joel invites me to meet his family and stay overnight at his house in Queens. I had established in his front seat for me the zone of comfort and realized while visiting him, I'd be able to get free rides for the rest of my life. As I entered the Seidman household, I could immediately tell that it was a house full of warmth. In fact, the average temperature inside the house was 112 degrees. Not an ideal temperature for a normal-sized 320-pound man. As sweat dripped from my body, I met Joel's lovely mother. Shulamith Seidman was clearly a very intelligent woman, but had a blind spot. She never felt I had enough to eat. Shulamith would follow me around the house, offering me incredibly delicious food, lest I die from starvation. Strange, but something I could get used to. I met Danny Seidman, his brother, and he was always talking about something I wasn't interested in, but as long as Shulamith was feeding me, I didn't care. Joel told me his brother David was living on his own. I assumed David moved out to avoid the heat stroke I was about to suffer. Hans Seidman was working late, and I didn't get to meet him at dinner. In fact, I hadn't seen Hans until after we got back late at night, and we were about to turn into bed. In the middle of the night, as I kept tossing, turning, and dripping sweat from the intense heat, I thought I heard the police radio from the Seidman house. Feeling that I had contracted malaria from the tropical heat, I tried to get water to lower my body temperature. As I sat up, a diminutive gray-haired man burst into Joel's bedroom wearing a sleeveless undershirt and striped boxers. This man announced that we all had to get up and listen to some police radio traffic about a major crime in Queens. Yes, I had finally met Hans Seidman, crime enthusiast. For the next hour, he showed me the police radio scanner and told me how he kept track of all the crime going on in the city. In my heat-induced delirium, I came to believe that Hans Seidman was the secret identity of a Jewish-American crime fighter, boxer man who battled evildoers in his striped boxers and sleeveless undershirt. I and the rest of America could rest easy knowing that Boxer Man was forever vigilantly protecting us. To this day, the sight of boxer shorts causes a post-traumatic stress reaction that makes me break out in a sweat and crave Shalamith Seidman's desserts. That was Meyer Kotkin. I couldn't say it any better. Let me just say this. The one thing that I learned from a 52-year friendship is that Meyer taught me that family can extend beyond biology, that you become a part of a family through the sort of friendships that we forged over the years. And to Gretchen and to Ethan and to Josh and to Nicole, I should let you know how deeply Meyer loved you and how well he knew that he was the luckiest of men to meet such an incredible woman and to have such wonderful children and daughter-in-law. And not only that, but he, feeling that I was a part of his family, had begged me on numerous occasions to make the following promise to him, that if something should happen to him, that I, my wife, our friends would always keep an eye on Gretchen, Josh, Ethan, and Nicole, and always be there for their happy occasions and their sad ones. Rest assured that whatever the future brings, whatever challenges you all face, whether the occasions are joyous or difficult, this is one promise that we will intend to keep. We intend to keep it to Meyer. We are with you for the long haul, through thick and thin, and we'll always look to you to share our happy occasions and sad ones as well. To Meyer, dear friend, farewell till we meet again.
And our concluding speaker is Mark Leibovitz.
Okay, my promise to you all that this is going to be short. I do not want to get the hook. I promise. I am also sure that Meyer wouldn't want to listen to me, would want to be eating by now. And finally, those of you who brought your cell phones in here, make sure everybody gets a picture so that this crowd isn't accused of being an AI kind of thing. All right. I think I'm going to save the jokes for another time. I'm going to save jokes for or the funny stories about Meyer for when we get together at the house or something like that. But I'd like to speak about what Meyer meant to me. Now, I think there's like 3 levels of friendship. There's groups of people that you like to spend time with and hang out with. I said there's another group of people, much smaller, that you can count on and they can count on you. That's a very precious group of people to be a part of. And there's a third group, and that's tiny, and hopefully everybody has somebody like that, and that's somebody who elevates you, somebody whose interactions with you and life with you has made you a better person. So I was brought up here, I think, to represent, I was told, the bridge community. I don't know how I can do that. Joanne already did a beautiful job of posting on bridge winners. A really lovely piece about Meyer and the enormous contributions that he made to the bridge world, both locally, nationally, and in some cases even internationally at this point. I said, but I just want to talk for a minute about 40 years, close to 40 years of friendship that I had with Meyer. And it touched on so many different aspects. I first came across Meyer as a bridge opponent. And playing against Meyer as an opponent, the first thing you can learn is how to treat your opponents with respect and how to inject humor into the game so that it's a lot of fun. And it was always fun to be around him. And even when he was hammering you at the table and just destroying you, he did it with a sense of humor, and you enjoyed it. Many, many years later, I got to partner with Meyer as one of his bridge partners. And I know this is going to be like a straight line. You know, he made me a better player. It's okay, bridge players. He's easy on me here. You know, basically through his creativity and imagination, which was quite extraordinary. I says, we also interacted as online teaching students together, and his amazing ability to deal with the internet, handle the internet, and help me to be and interact with students, helped me to become a better teacher. But for the most part of 20 years or so, maybe not quite 20 years, Meyer and I were kind of glued at the hip. He was tournament chair for all the local tournaments in our area, and I was the primary director, bridge director for all the tournaments in the area. And he helped me get noticed at a time when I was having difficulty getting traction with the ACBL, which is the National Bridge League. But he also had magnificent ideas about how to run a tournament and how to deal with players and how to make it fun for everybody. And the amount of energy that generated, and the amount of enthusiasm and the amount of fun I just had working with him, just for, you know, year after year, tournament after tournament, it was it made me a more energetic director. His ideas were cutting edge, and he was just a joy and a pleasure to work with. And the common thread in all of this is that what Meyer tended to see the best in people, but not only did he see the best in people, he managed to get it out of a lot of people. And that's how I remember him. Okay.
Please rise if you are able for the memorial prayer, El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamramim, Hamtzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Shechina, B'malot Kedoshim Utehorim, Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim. Et Nishmat, Meyer Tzvi ben Yehuda Dov ve'Esther, Shehalach la'olamo, Began Eden tehe menuchato. Ana balarachamim hasti rehu beseter knafecha la'olamim. Utzvor b'tzvor chayim et nishmato. Adonai hu nachalato. V'yanuach v'shalom al mishkavo. V'nomar Amen. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, to the soul of Meyer Tzvi ben Yehuda Dov ve'Esther, Meyer Kotkin, who has gone to his eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that he performed in the land of the living. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. Adonai is his portion. May he rest in peace, and we say, Amen. You may be seated.
The internment is going to be at the Crescent Memorial Park in Pennsauken in the CBT section. Family and friends are welcome back to the house following the internment. And there will be Shiva Minyanim tonight through Monday evening, not Friday night, of course. And Saturday evening will be at 8. Every other evening will be at 7 p.m. Any potential donations may be made in Meyer's memory to Congregation Beth Tikva. Adonai miyagur bohelecha v'yishkon bahar kodshecha holech kamim b'foy tzedek v'dover emet lavavo lo ragal al lishono lo asal re'ein ra'ah v'cherpa lo nasa al krovo nivzeh be'einav nimans yireh Adonai yichabed yishpa v'arav lo yamir תעשו ונתן בנשק ושולחת המתאים הלוטה או תאלה